Okay, there you go. Sound restored. Thank you for notifying me. We're having a little bit of problems today, so yeah, you can be praying for us. We're war with technology.
Alright, so creation and evolution. God created the universe and all that is in it by his sovereign effort.
Actually, can you give me a second? Because they don't have the ability to see this, and I was supposed to add this, and I forgot it. It'll just take me a second.
Way to go.
Well, I can see the video.
Actually, is there a way to copy this somewhere? Do you have this on like a document?
You have it on a document.
I can't access that. Can you email me that document real quick?
Do we have it somewhere? The statement of faith?
It's on the terabyte.
Do you have internet? You have
I do, but I don't have access to our church's account because I don't have my own password.
This is why you need to stop using that fancy password saver.
But yeah, if you could email me the document, like you have access to the church account, right? I mean the drive that I shared with you.
The Google Drive.
I probably have it.
I mean, we don't have to. It's just if we could have it so they could read it. But
by the time they find it and email it, you probably have it tapped up.
No, I got it right here.
Oh, okay.
I'm just gonna copy and send it to you over email.
That would be great. That would be best.
What is your
Sean@Timbleton.io.
Yeah, that's right. Okay.
Church meeting document.
Yep.
All right, there you go. It's sent.
Meeting
Actually,
topics.
I like your ankle bracelet. I love ankle bracelets.
Does it get added in here? So I've got statement of faith.
Statement of faith.
I get worried about wearing them because.
And then if you scroll down.
Charlton. Really?
What's so funny? Did you put something weird in the message?
Yes.
Not the message, the subject.
What is it?
I put "Hey baby" in the
Oh,
subject.
Charlton.
Oh my gosh.
There's only 3 pages. Let me go to the Constitution.
Oh. Hello.
Well, it says statement of faith.
Oh, by the way, on the statement of faith, we have gone
I see.
through
So you're
one
going-
page front and back
You need to go scroll down.
of like 7.
Oh, it's loading.
I was like, what in the world?
Is there a logical break to this?
Not really.
I'm gonna. Where we it says we disagree.
You can say, yeah, probably we disagree. Would be the most logical break of them all.
Creation, evolution.
Okay. Now we're ready.
Okay, cool. Alright. Our statement of faith says, God created the universe and all that is in it by his sovereign effort. God brought the universe into existence by the exertion of his will. Within Christianity, there is room for the interpretation of the 6 creation days to be a literal 7 24-hour periods, but also longer periods. Nevertheless, Adam and Eve were real people created by God, just as Genesis says. We disagree with the theories of macroevolution and theistic evolution. Microevolution, the modification of existing species with existing genetic information that allows species to adapt to environments, is within the realm of Christian orthodoxy. We did not evolve from other species into our present condition. God did not guide evolution of species by which humanity, the animal kingdom, or the plant kingdom was developed. The general theory of evolution is unscriptural and counterfactual.
I have something to suggest real quick.
Mm-hmm.
Can he be heard?
That's what I was thinking too.
You probably do need to speak a little bit louder and up.
How big of a deal would it be to set up that?
I don't have an extra USB port.
You don't?
No.
Okay.
I've only got 2 and they're both being used.
Okay.
I had already thought about that one. I'm like, oh yeah, the lapel mic is still configured, but no.
Okay.
So just project.
Just talk loud.
That's more deeper and muffled, actually. Or how Charlie Brown's parents talk. Okay.
Alright, so the one and only verse that we have is Genesis 1, 1 to 31, which is Genesis 1.
What?
And we have already read over that. As far as the actual getting into depth on things, so just a couple of things I wanted to outline. First of all, starting way at the beginning, Genesis 1:1 says, "In the beginning God created the heavens and the earth." Genesis 1:2 says, And the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the waters. Interestingly enough, if we go to John 1, we can go, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God, and it talks about how everything came into being because of the Word. Why I bring those three up is because the Trinity is actually present in creation. So we have Genesis 1.
You said John 1, so...
Yeah, okay, yeah, this is fine. John 1:1, here in the beginning was the Word and was with God, and all this good stuff. 1:3, all things came into being through him, and apart from him nothing came into being that has come into being. And in that verse alone right there, John 1:3, it tells us that Jesus was part of creation. And not only that, but he was what people describe as the creative agent. It was kind of like God ordered Jesus to make everything. That's what people try to equate it to. Whether or not that's exactly true, we know that regardless, the Trinity was present in creation.
Down and enunciate. Please. I'm having a hard time understanding what you're saying.
In Genesis as well. Okay, so I guess to give a little bit of backstory before going into this, there is the belief that the world is evil, like just inherently evil, and a lot of stuff comes from that. It's like, okay, so we are sinful because we are material, and it's not because of our sin that we are sinful. It's because we are material is why we're sinful. And like that is, first of all, wrong, but second of all, that holds a lot of negative implications. First of all, that means that creation itself is in some way not good, in some way bad, in some way inherently sinful. Second, it would also mean that Jesus Christ would not be able to be God because he wouldn't be able to be perfect, because if being material is being imperfect inherently, then Jesus could not be, God cannot become a man in Jesus. And so we actually have scattered throughout the entirety of Genesis 1, and God saw that it was good. And then on day 6 it says that, he looked upon all of creation, he saw that it was very good. Now, in our English mindset, we usually try to think about, like, God looked at it and goes, like, man, I really like this. But that's not what he was talking about. The word for good, we cheapen, and it's very unfortunate because, you look at, like, what Jesus said. This guy comes up to him and says, good teacher, blah, 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 blah. And Jesus says, wait, first of all, you're calling me good. Nobody is good but God. And like the word good there, we've talked about, and Francis Chan has talked about, like that we cheapen words just by our overuse of them. So what God is saying right here he looked upon everything he made and he saw that it was good. It means that it was inherently good. Like it was without sin. It was what God would say. He would look upon it and go, this is good. Not just I like this, but this is fine, this is perfect, this is whatever adjective you want to give it. And so when we look upon creation in Genesis 1 and see that it was good, we reaffirm, first of all, that God created us good inherently. God created Jesus Christ as a man, thus having the ability to be part of a material creation and still be perfect. And then also that God didn't make any accidents in creation. There's a whole lot of things that come along with that.
I think that's another thing people can get tripped on, is that, like, was it a mistake, like, God making us, like, especially if he knew what was going to happen and everything. But, he created it perfectly. It's a matter of what his creation did to itself after the fact.
Pretty much.
So, he created us good, but we chose to disobey him and go our own way with our own understanding and sinned. Which is actually kind of funny because, like, if you think about it, the fall of Satan and his angels, how that came about and how our fall came about wasn't too terribly different. And so it's like, what's interesting though is the grace that was given to us that Satan has not received.
Yeah, that is true.
By his own choice, though. Or is it
there is no atonement for demons.
That's true. There's no atonement. They made their choice.
And like, what's interesting about that, which we'll get into a lot more in depth when we talk about sin, is all sin in some way, shape, or form can be categorized under usurpation, which that is taking God off of his throne and putting yourself onto it. Or not putting yourself, but putting somebody else, somebody other than God on the throne.
Removing God from the authority.
Yeah, and that is so widely applicable. You can give me any sin, and I can find a way that it works with that.
Yep.
Because it's like, eating of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. That is them removing God from the throne and the authority, and instead putting themselves there in the most pure form, where it's saying, God told me this, but I'm going to instead do something else.
Because he has no authority.
Yeah. And so without believing that God is the authority, then you can do whatever you want to. But then that's sin. And so anyways, that's a discussion for a later time, which we will get into a lot more in depth. The next thing I wanted to talk about is creation ex nihilo.
What?
Yeah, it's great. Creation ex nihilo is the idea that God created everything out of nothing. Ex nihilo means out of nothing. So
that
when
makes
we...
the Minecraft mod pack so much more sense.
Is there actually something called
There's a Minecraft mod called Ex Nihilo, and it's all about Sky Factory, where you build out of nothing. And I was just like, I never understood what that meant, and now I know what Ex Nihilo means.
Yes.
There you go.
Okay, so this idea it stems from, first of all, the idea that God existed without having anything else needing to exist. So he himself was self-existent, and he himself decided to create the world. And upon his sovereign will, upon his decision to make the world, he created matter, and he created energy, and he created time, and he created all this jumbled up stuff. And he didn't need to exist coterminous with, or not coterminous, whatever, at the same time as any other thing. So it wasn't that God existed and then a bunch of materials existed also, because then the materials and God would have to be self-existent separately. But instead it's just God. So God created the raw materials that he used to make the world, to make the cosmos, to make everything. So when he willed it into existence, he created everything ex nihilo.
And that's hard for us to actually even imagine, because we can't imagine anything beyond
the beginning,
beyond time or what we see in the universe.
Yeah, because Genesis 1:1 is actually so deep, like people don't fully understand that you have in the beginning, you have time, God created the heavens, you have space, and the earth, matter. So in the first verse, we already have the entirety of the universe being created, not just the physical matter, but then also the universe, the space that it exists in, and then also the time that God created. And it's like we don't understand what it's like to live without time, and nor will we until we die. And so we kind of like trudge along with the best analogies that we can come up with to parallel us to that. And so God, living outside of time, like, what does that look like? And frankly, it doesn't really matter that much, because what we need to know is that this is what God is. God is God. Nobody created God. God didn't even create himself. He just always was because of his own sovereign will. And like that is so confusing that we can't wrap our heads around it. But that doesn't matter that we can't reason it. It still is, because that is God. And it's like, and a lot of people will get stuck on things like that, because it just doesn't make sense. It doesn't compute. And it's like, unfortunately, we don't know why it exists that way. We don't understand it, but someday we will. And maybe it'll be clear as day and we'll be like, that makes total sense. But what we have right now, we don't understand.
It's wibbly wobbly, timey wimey stuff.
Basically. Alright, if you want to look up verses that talk about creation ex nihilo, there is Hebrews 1:10 and Matthew 13:35.
I got
Matthew what?
13:35.
Was it first?
Hebrews 1:10.
It won't let me do multiple books at the same time, so 1 second.
Okay.
So Hebrews 1:10
Yep.
and Matthew what?
13:35.
Which one are we doing first?
Hebrews 1:10, sure. And you, Lord, in the beginning laid the foundation of the earth, and the heavens are the works of your hands.
That's just like in Psalm. The heavens, blah 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 blah. I forget what verse that is.
Psalm 19:1.
The heavens declare.
Heavens declare the glory of God.
Yep.
The skies proclaim the works of his hands.
Yep.
Yep. I'm going to get into that a little bit later.
Do I need to bring that up, Psalms?
No, not right now. We'll get to that. All right, Matthew 13:35.
This was to fulfill what was spoken through the prophet. I will open my mouth in parables. I will utter things hidden since the foundation of the world.
Now, both of these verses talk about the foundation of the world. This is the idea that God himself was the one who laid the foundation. Like, there was a time when there wasn't a foundation, and this was created by God.
What was it? Matthew what?
13:35.
Did you guys read it yet?
Yeah. And then you can also, we already talked about it a little bit earlier, but John 1:1-3, it talks about how everything came to be because of what the Word had done. So there's all kinds of verses that give the idea of because of God, everything exists. Not there was already existing things that God used. All right, the next idea is that simply God created everything. If we go to Ephesians 3:9. It says, and to bring to light what is the administration of the mystery for which ages has been hidden in God who created all things. Now, obviously, all I really care about is that last part, God who created all things. And then also in Colossians 1:16, it's a similar idea.
1:16?
Why does it say Colossians 1:16?
What is it?
By him all things are created in heaven and earth, visible and invisible.
Yeah, what is that?
That's Colossians 1:16.
So that's why it's Colossians 1:16, because that's what it was supposed to be.
Whether
I think I hit
thrones
the
or
wrong
dominions or rulers or authorities,
Oh, yeah, there we
all
go.
things have been created through him and for him.
Yep. I hit the wrong button, I'm sorry. For all things were created, by him all things were created, and this is talking about Jesus. Both in the heavens and on the earth, visible and invisible, thrones or dominions, rulers, authorities, all things have been created through him and for him.
So that means angels and demons.
Mm-hmm. All right, next is
Well,
Were there-
God
there
didn't
were
create
demons
demons.
before
Yeah.
the fall, right?
God didn't create
he
demons.
created the angels
and they fell. Yeah.
So I mean, he created the thing that became the demons.
Yeah, because God doesn't create evil.
Right.
Nice catch, guys.
No, it's an interesting point because like a lot of people will say, well, did God create Satan? The answer is technically yes, but also technically no. Because technically yes, he did create Satan
You created
before
Lucifer.
he fell. Now, what made Satan Satan now is by his own choice and his own fault. So I mean, technically God did create the being that became Satan, but it wasn't that God created Satan.
Why do we call him Satan and not Lucifer?
Satan means the accuser in Hebrew.
What does Lucifer mean?
It's a proper name.
Yeah, but all names mean something. What does Lucifer mean?
I'm not actually sure.
But I guess that doesn't answer my question. Why do we call him Satan instead of Lucifer?
It's just what we call him.
Something that started a while back, and we all just say it. We don't think.
I mean, why do we all say Lord instead of Yahweh?
Because
Jesus
of his holy?
called him Lucifer or Satan.
Yep. Even Jesus himself called him Satan because a lot of the times there's, and this is in some cases, I don't know if it's all cases, I don't even know if it's this case, but there's kind of almost a disrespect that's used when talking about Satan as Satan instead of Lucifer because you're giving him a title of something that he's done. So if I was to call, Courtney the wife, and I was to only refer to her as the wife without ever referring to her as Courtney, it would have a different impact on our relationship than if I called her Courtney.
But one of the reasons we don't call God Yahweh is to respect his name.
Mm-hmm. And so there's the whole respect versus disrespect. Like, what are you doing?
So we're disrespecting God when we say Lord?
No, that's what I'm trying to get at. It's your intention of it. Like, if somebody is doing this so that it is disrespectful, then it's disrespectful. somebody's doing it something so that it is respectful, then it is respectful.
So Jesus
It's
was
kind
being
of that
disrespectful to
So Satan, yes. Basically.
I guess for me, like I was thinking, like it makes sense when we reference Satan as just the forces of evil, like because it's not always just Lucifer himself, but like when specifically saying like who led the fall, it's not Satan; it was Lucifer, right?
I mean, once you get into technically yes, technically no, because Satan and Lucifer are one and the same. But he was.
I guess that's what I'm trying to get at, though, is we don't necessarily refer to Satan as Lucifer. We typically, in our culture, refer to Satan as the forces of evil. And that's
I don't
incorrect.
know. Because anytime I mean Satan, I mean Satan. And anytime I mean demons, I mean demons. I don't mean, like, just... I mean, there are times that we refer to Satan as, like, oh, it's a Satan attack, which means that it is a force of evil.
Yeah.
There are times we do that. But there are also times that we refer to Satan as him. And there are times referred to him as his demons. And there are times referred to him as just the forces of evil. Just like... I mean, we refer to God as God and the Holy Spirit and Jesus. And one of the great things about the English language is that you can say the same thing a bunch of different ways. So,
Yeah. Well, I guess, like, for God, there's God, Yahweh, Lord, all of that.
Yeah.
It all still refers to the same thing.
Yep.
Like, there is no difference. But, like, for us and how our culture uses it, Satan could or could not mean. And I feel like it would be better to actually, like, use words to refer to what you actually mean by. So if that means never using Satan to refer to anything other than Lucifer himself, then okay, but I feel like that's not how it happens.
Yeah, and you're right. Most of the time when we refer to Satan, we refer to the whole forces of evil. If you look at Revelation 12:7-9, it says, "And a war broke out in heaven. Michael and his angels fought with the dragon, and the dragon and his angels fought, but they did not prevail, nor was a place found for them in heaven any longer. So the great dragon was cast out." And this is where it gets interesting. "That serpent of old, called the devil and Satan, who deceives the whole world, he was cast down into the earth, and his angels were cast out with him."
Okay, hold on.
So especially verse 9 is what's interesting.
The great dragon was thrown down, the serpent.
So he's got 4 different names in there. Great dragon, serpent of old, devil, Satan, deceiver of the world.
But is Satan...
That's 5.
Okay, I guess... okay, that is referring to Satan as the great dragon then.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And the great dragon, the serpent of... okay. Okay.
Yep.
So it sounds to me then what we need to do is not necessarily change what we call him, but rather stop using Satan to refer to...
Everything.
Everything. No, that's right. I would agree.
That's probably good.
Usually when we say Satan, like we are referring to the whole forces of evil, and so that's fairly inaccurate. Now, a lot of times people will say, you know, Satan is tempting me or something like that, and it's like, most likely no. He's got bigger and better things to do than deal with just a random human being. So it's more likely a demon who is oppressing you or who is tempting you or whatever, and it's one of Satan's minions, or however you want to word it. One of...
Yeah, because Satan is not omnipresent.
No.
Satan cannot be everywhere at once. He can only be one place.
Exactly, and neither can his demons.
Yeah.
Like, when a person is being afflicted, you know, like the man that had a legion in him in the Bible, they could only be inside of him. They couldn't, I mean, each of them probably could have went somewhere else, but
How many are there?
millions.
1/half as many angels as there are.
And how many angels are there?
Don't. Supposedly, there are so stinking many of them. Like, we're talking billions upon billions.
A
Upon
legion,
billions.
isn't legion 12,000?
Something like that.
Yeah.
So,
Jesus referred to it one time where he said, I could send thousands of legions down.
Yeah. And like that wouldn't even scratch on the surface of his army kind of idea.
mm-mm.
And the idea is that there are more, like, it's argued that there are more angels than there are human beings on the earth.
currently or ever that were on the earth? Or
I don't know. I think currently. Like, I'm not... The number, we will never know.
yeah.
But it's that idea that they can... There's... People have made good arguments for and against guardian angels. I don't know. Like, I'm more on the side of, I think there's guardian angels. And...
But does every single
guardian
person have a guardian angel?
And that's the question.
Christians do.
Every single Christian would have a guardian angel. Because, like, it says in the Bible that God orders his angels concerning you. And talking about children, it says that they are protected by their angels. Which is interesting wording of all things to talk about. So when it comes down to things like that, it's like there would have to be a lot of angels in order to protect all of them. And it also says angels, plural, meaning that there could very well be multiple angels.
Well, I know I need multiple angels to keep my car on the road.
There's this thing that my parents joke with Chandler about, because when he was young, he did a lot of really dumb stuff, just being curious. And he ended up, like, they joke about, he has like a bunch of guardian angels, and they're all like, they got like blood and bruises and bandages all over them and stuff like that.
All the times that they've saved him.
Yeah.
That's kind of like, I think we forget. I think we, when we're afraid, we give the thing that we're afraid of more power than it should, and we forget that God is protecting us, and he's protecting us so much that he's assigning angels to us, and he will step in himself for us, and his hand of protection is greater than anything. We really don't need the angels around us because God's hand of protection is so great, but for some reason it's part of his will for each of us to have a guardian angel.
So is there actual scripture that backs up the whole guardian angel per person thing?
I don't know. There's things that are sort of allude to it, but as far as like directly stating that, no.
Yeah, it's hard to pull that out biblically.
Because I don't know that I necessarily agree with that every single person has guardian angels at all times. There might be times where, God will send one to protect you if you're going to go through something that you need it, but like... Oh.
Sorry.
Nice.
I'm fidgeting.
Well,
But I do know there are people who have them. For example, my dad has a guardian angel, and he's mentioned a couple times how, like one time he was just, I think it was running through the woods just as a kid or whatever, jumped, just running, jumping over things, jumped over a log, right up on a snake, reared up to bite him. I don't know if it was a rattlesnake or what, and in midair he turned and was back on the other side of the log running away from the snake. And so, and I know for a fact there have been times that, I've been saved. So, I know that they do exist, and I know that they're take care of it. I don't know that I necessarily think every single Christian has.
My mom had a really cool story about, I think I've shared it before, about a guardian angel.
Yeah.
She was it was her and her 4 sisters, my grandpa and my grandma driving, and it was actually the owner of Silver City who crashed into them and gave them season passes after all that. But it was funny because, like my mom, she said they were getting close to home, so the sisters were taking off their seatbelts, getting ready, and it was almost before they were home when they just get sideswiped. And my mom, she's all she remembers. She just remembers when the accident happened. She was floating above it. She was watching the accident happen,
body and soul.
And then after that, she remembers just coming up to the scene. Like, she was away from the scene. All these people hear ambulance, and my grandma's just yelling, "Where's my daughter?" And my mom comes back, and people wouldn't let her in because they didn't think she was part of the accident. They were thinking she's just some kid trying to get in. But no, she was in the accident, and she believed the guardian angel held her and then protected her because she didn't have any scratches on her, and somehow she flew out of the car. So I thought that was really neat.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. And, you have to be careful about what kind of testimonies people who can see things in the spiritual realm actually give, because you have to have an intense biblical knowledge to back up that what they're saying is true without trying to justify it. And I have heard of people who can see things in the spiritual realm that at times people don't have angels next to them. But it's not because they're not protected still in some way.
Yeah, and that's the thing, you made a good point. We don't need the angels. God can do it without any effort. And so, I think honestly the angels are just for those, you know, who sometimes need that little bit of extra faith.
Or
So
or an answer to some sort of prayer
Yeah.
that you prayed, or they're messengers. Also pretty stinking great warriors. Sinhijki has described what the angel that is assigned to me, if you want to say that, to watch after me. And I don't know if she's there all the time or not, but she described to me what she looks like, and she said each of them look different, but they're all really beautiful. And they're big. She says they're huge. Like, they're bigger than the apartment. And this is her testimony, but she says the angels are ginormous. Like, they take up a whole room. And then the demons are like this big. But because we get afraid of them, they turn into something bigger. And I don't know if that's true. That's just what I've heard. So, I've never seen them myself. So, not that what I see you can rely on actually being true. Because we're so easy to be manipulated.
I kind of want to write that thing that he's talking about in that video where you're stomping on your feet or whatever, what you write on your shoe or something. I can't remember what that was. But anyways.
What?
It was...
it's part of the Conquer series. One of the things that they asked us to do that we thought was silly, and now Chris is saying that he actually feels like that would be
fun to do.
Okay.
Well, this comes from scripture, something about putting Satan at your feet or something like that.
Yeah, I know what you're
saying. He used
saying.
an analogy like, okay, write down, I forgot what he said to write down on your shoe. Something about something. I don't know, I can't remember now. So,
I
there
remember
goes
that
whole
though.
idea.
I know what you're talking about. I don't remember exactly what it was, but I remember that in the videos.
so reeling it back into creation and evolution. Sorry, Charlton.
Thanks for letting us go on that funny trail.
Yep.
That's what you get for giving us a verse that has something not relative to.
No, what's wrong with me? I need to just be like, okay, so we're going to talk about this verse. It says this verse says this, and that's all I want to talk about. Let's not bring it up. Okay. Psalm 19:1. Now, this small little portion here, I wanted to say that creation was created, we can say how the world was created, the process in which it happened. And, evolution is a theory of the process that, I really disagree with. And the process then, how it came to be, is that, God spoke it into existence. But that's how. That doesn't tell us why. This explains a little bit of why. So, the heavens are telling of the glory of God, and the expanse is declaring the work of his hands. The other translations that I think are more elegant says the heavens declare the glory of God, and the skies proclaim the work of his hands. Whatever, it's translations. This explains the why. This is explaining what creation is doing, but it also gives an explanation of why. It's for God's glory. Now what's interesting, something that reading scripture you learn about God, is that everything that he does is for his own glory. And a lot of people are like, well, that's really selfish, God doing things only for himself. It's like, well,
Kind of deserves it.
First of all, he kind of deserves it. Second of all, he's God, and we don't get to question him. If he creates things for his glory, we have to be like, okay. And then third, it's actually fine, because why else would he create it? Because him creating something to, say, bring glory to man, then that would be God worshiping man. And then God would be sinning, because he is, once again, taking God off the throne and putting somebody else other than God on it. And God, he cannot sin, because he is so perfect that this is for his own glory. And that's okay. That's totally fine. In fact, that's pretty good. I think it's pretty nice.
I mean, if you think about it, as a human being, if you were perfect, you would deserve glory for being perfect.
Mm-hmm.
But you're not.
Yeah.
So you don't. So who does? God.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you think about it, if someone was perfect, they should be glorified for being perfect.
Yeah, like Jesus.
Yeah, and so, it makes logical sense that if there's only one person who's perfect, they would create things to glorify. Because, I mean, you're not going to be glorified in isolation.
Right.
So, didn't he create the angels first for glorification and, just to sing his praises or something?
There's different theories about when the angels came to being, but I would say yes.
I mean, there were some specific angels that just praised God.
Yeah.
At night.
And I feel like God's like, okay, well, this is nice, but now I want something I can actually have a relationship that praises me because they want to, not be just because that's what they're made to do.
Yeah, and he made us as his children with great love,
Yeah.
not
And,
just randomly without a thought.
yeah, and talking about being his children, what I think is really interesting is some people will use the verses that talk about us being God's children to say that essentially we are God's. And it's like, take that a step back, because first of all, we are not his children because we are descendants of God. We are his children because he adopts us.
Yes.
That's what Scripture says. So to be adopted, you don't have to be of the same form. Like,
What about
you adopting a
Jews,
dog
then?
doesn't make the dog a human.
Yeah.
What about Jews?
That was a better example than I was going to come up with.
Because I've always understood it as, I understand what you're getting at when you say that, but I've always understood the Jews as God's children and everyone else is grafted and adopted.
Yes, they're more of his people, but still, once again, the adoption idea is what happens. Because you think about Abraham. Oh, okay, so let's back up. Let's talk about Adam. Adam would be the closest thing to a descendant of God that we have, but he, once again, was not, he was created by God. He wasn't,
Adam
Birth.
Also, if you think about it, if you were a descendant of God, wouldn't you also be perfect?
Now, wouldn't you also have the attributes of God?
Yeah.
Or at least be of the same type as God?
Yeah.
But no, we are created beings inferior to God. And
Adam
that's
was
okay.
until he ate that fruit.
He-
I'm just kidding.
There's this long-running joke that Adam and Eve had telekinesis.
Well,
We're not going to get into that.
How's that a joke? That sounds like a theory more than a joke.
It is a theory, but it escalated into just randomly we'll be talking about creation, and then somebody will say, "Yeah, and Adam and Eve had telekinesis," and everybody laughs.
Like that.
Inside
Everyone just
jokes.
laughed.
Everybody laughs. So anyways, where are we?
on the last one.
If only. All right. Then an interesting thing that I wanted to point out about creation is God's later creative work. So when we think of creation, we think, okay, so God created the world in Genesis 1-2, and that's all He did. It's like, well, no, actually, because we have Him first of all creating basically everything ex nihilo, and then we have take for example, Eve was created out of Adam's rib. Can't speak.
Rib.
It's rib. So God didn't need to use that rib, but He did. And I think that is representative of a whole lot of things. Because He also created like the birds or He created the livestock out of livestock and animals out of the dirt, and then He created like the birds and the fish out of the water or something like that. It has some weird wording in Genesis 2 that gives that general idea that God used something to create them. Or you talk about man, that He breathed life into dirt, and that's where we get man. And so you have this idea that God used things upon His own decision to create other things. And why I bring that up is, what about let's talk about dogs for a moment. How many breeds of dogs are there? There's a bunch of them. They're still coming out with them. And a lot of people will say...
I know, it sounds like a production facility, a research dog, and they're still coming out with new models.
But that idea is we have so many types of dogs, but that's part of God's creation. He implemented into their genetic code to be able to breed and then have, certain genes that are dominant, certain ones that are recessive, and then we have other breeds of dogs, and then we have other colorations of dogs, and even within the breeds and colorations of those specific dogs, we also have random colorations within that. So you got a calico cat, for example. Not all calico cats look exactly the same. So we have a lot of differences, and these are all genetic, you could call them mutations or developments or whatever that has gone on, and that is within God's later creative work, as we would call it. So you get corn that we eat today, sweet corn. It didn't start out like that. It's because, genetic modification, or not really that, but there's a whole process of, they have...
It's corn didn't start out how it is today. They found one that looked better, and then they started only using its seeds and kept using the best seeds of the one that grew the best. Yeah. Whatever, I forgot the actual word that's called.
I forget what it's called too, but
yeah.
whatever that is. So you have that idea that it's not outside of the realm of God's will, because that is what God allows to happen, and God allows these things to be. And so this is God's work that is so in-depth and so implemented into creation itself that we can still come up with new breeds of animals and new types of plants and stuff like that because of what God did in the Garden of Eden, implementing like amazing genetic code into each one of them. Yeah. Okay. Then I wanted to briefly look over the 7 days of creation, which is actually technically 6 days of creation. I really want to be.
God was lazy on the 7th.
Yeah, God was lazy.
No.
He was just
What are we
like,
learning here?
I don't want to do this anymore. No.
No, he gave that day of rest for us as a gift.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, okay, sorry, I was going to go out to a preaching, but you just keep going.
You can go ahead if you want to.
I was just say sometimes maybe talked about that, like, you know, some people will be like, oh, if you work on the Sabbath, it's such a big deal, and that gets into the legalistic view and the Pharisee view and how, like, God gave it to us as a gift. We don't have to use it, but you'll definitely notice when you don't use it. Like, if you're working 7 days a week to provide for your family, God gives you that ability to do so, but He also wants you to take a day of rest, and if you're not, you're going to be able to start seeing that you're going to be so exhausted, you're not going to be forming mentally and physically where you could be if you took that gift and actually used it.
It's true. And also talking about working days, you know, biblically, you worked 12-hour days, 6 days a week. So us, we're so lame working only 40 hours a week from 8 to 5 or however the schedule usually works.
Yeah,
Because
they
people
worked
work
hard.
sun up to sundown, Monday,
Yeah.
Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday.
Well, and to
And
farmers
Sunday,
from back
Saturday,
then and
Sunday.
today, we got all this equipment we can ride in that has AC. They're out there with their scythes and whatever primitive technology they had way back then, doing it, pulling weeds by hand, taking care of it. I mean, jeez.
Yeah, they weren't wimps back then like we are.
I mean, I think we are wimps.
Yeah, they were really, really strong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But they didn't have the medical knowledge that we have today.
Yeah.
Life expectancy has been weird throughout time. So first of all, you got like from creation to the flood was a long stinking time. And then flood to, I don't know, a few hundred years forward, life expectancy slowly dissolved to about 70 years. And from that point until really like within the last couple of hundred years, it has
Started
fluctuated
going back up.
down and up to like reaching all the way down to like 35 years old would be life expectancy in the Middle Ages and stuff like that. So you have all these people who are dying very early, and that is a very big problem for trying to do stuff. So then nowadays we have technology that allows us to live longer, and our life expectancy is about 70 years now. And people live to be...
Soon we'll get back up to about 900
Yeah.
with epigenetic modification.
Epigenetic.
Just kidding.
That's the Conquer Series buzzword. Epigenetic modification.
Whenever we went to the Creation Museum, the guy was saying that his friend that was a biologist or whatever was saying that looking at human cells, there's no reason that we should die. There's no reason that the cells die.
Yeah, scientists have not yet been able to identify why we die.
Yep, it's true, and it's a very interesting thing because God created us to exist and to continue to get better and to continue to get old. Like, think about it. We are like some kind of magical orcs that roam the universe on our spinning ball. Because, like, think about it. Some animals, if they are like injured, they will just bleed out and die. But humans, if we are injured in a similar way, like let's say we get shot in the stomach or something, we won't just continue bleeding out until we die. We can like bandage it up and we can then heal and then later on be fine. Some creatures, you lop off a leg or something, it will cause them to die or it will be so diminishing that
Like
they can't
horses, if
exist.
they break a leg, you gotta put them down because
Yeah,
they can't.
horses are a great example.
Yeah.
You know, we say they're as healthy as a horse. It's like, to be as healthy as a human, you know, horses are kind of fragile. But like, in the midst of all that, God has created us specifically, set apart from all of the rest of creation, to be able to live longer and to be able to heal and stuff like that. It's just super weird and super cool. But anyways, so back to our discussion, unless somebody else had something else. Okay. I wanted to talk about the 6 days of creation and the 7th day of sort of not.
We need to
also
go
sort
to
of-
Tennessee and see the Ark and stuff.
Oh shit.
That's so cool. As a church group or something. Because
Didn't that place get flooded and destroyed?
That'd be ironic.
No, I
That
think
was
it
a
did.
different one.
Oh, it was? Okay, it was ironic.
That was when they were building in a different country, I thought.
I don't know. Someone was trying to rebuild a life-size ark, And it got flooded and destroyed.
Got flooded.
Because I built the same
How
guy
did
that
that
made the Creation Museum, that something
That's-
Ham, what's his name?
Yeah, I went there.
He
It's
made
cool.
the
Yeah.
Ark too. Isn't it called like Ark Encounter or something?
Yeah, I think it's.
Where it's an
Ark
actual
Encounter.
1-to-1 scale on biblical dimensions, and he has it inside. You can walk around. It's got all where the animals are. It's all like clay-made animals and stuff.
They're not actual animals.
No.
Dang it.
They have a petting zoo though. But don't pet the kangaroo's back because it will bite you.
But anyway, sorry for that. I just want to go there because it's
You went to the
Wanted to go.
actual Creation Museum.
We went whenever we went on a missions trip.
Alright, so the 6 days of creation, you have the first. Okay, so this comes into one of the things I'll talk about in a little bit, but I'll tell you why this is significant later. The 6 days of creation are really split into 2 sections of 3. You have day 1, 2, and 3 is night and day are created, the sky and sea are created, and land and vegetation are created. On day 4, 5, and 6, they have the sun, moon, and stars are created. They sea creatures and the birds are created, and then animals and mankind are created. Now, why this is interesting is you take the first day and the 4th day, and they are parallel. Because you have night and day are created on day 1, and light and all that good stuff. And then day 4, the sun, the moon, and the stars are created. Which is also interesting to think about.
Wait,
where
what?
Light existed before the sun existed. A lot of people will say it's because the light shone from God. It was God who allowed the light to emanate from him, and that's where we get the light. And then he, metaphorically, gave the light that he bore to the sun, so that way it would bear light for the world. And
Where
then
does
also the moon and stars.
Where's the part that it says that the sun came afterward?
In Genesis 1, day 1, it talks about the night and the day, and day 4 is sun, moon, and stars.
Okay, so what chapter though?
Genesis 1.
I mean, verse. I'm sorry. I keep saying chapter. I mean
14. Especially verse 16 it talks about God made the 2 great lights, the greater light to govern the day and the lesser light to govern the night. He made the stars also. This is accepted to be the sun, the moon, and the stars. And especially because verse 17 says that God placed him in the expanse of the heavens to give light to the earth.
Wait a second though. It says here, then God said, "Let there be lights in the expanse of the heaven," so the stars, to separate day from the night. Oh, I just clicked something. Let there be signs for seasons and days and years, but let them separate the day from night. How would stars separate day from night?
No, it's the sun and the moon, and then the stars he created also.
Oh, where's the time before? Okay, you said before there was like verse day 2 or something?
Day 1 is where night and day are created.
Starts in verse 3.
Yeah, starting verse 3. God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. He saw the light was good. He separated the light from the darkness. The light he called day, and the darkness he called night. And there was evening, there was morning one day. It says nothing about the sun and the moon and the stars.
So is this a literal light then? Because he called the light day and he called the darkness night. Or is this just a metaphor?
We will get into that a little bit later. That is something very imperative to one of the things that I'll talk about in a little bit.
Okay.
All right, the second important thing is day 2 and day 5 talk about the sky and the sea, and then the sea creatures and the birds. So you have the sky is created on day 2, and they assume it to mean the atmosphere, not necessarily the skies and the heavens and the universe, but the skies and what is within the ozone layer and the atmosphere and stuff. So you have the sky created, and then birds created day 5. You also have on day 2 the sea created, and day 5 sea creatures created. So those 2 parallel. Day 3 and day 6 also parallel. So you have land and vegetation are created day 3, and then you have animals and man created on day 6. So you have where the land and vegetation, all that good stuff, is put to be able to sustain life for land creatures. You have then also land creatures, including mankind, are then created on the parallel day of day 6. And then on the 7th day, God rested, which is pretty straightforward. And also, it's not because God was lazy. God rested because, and people say, he was finished. Like, he didn't rest because he had to. He didn't rest because he was tired. He rested because he was finished. and then he gave that day as a gift to.
Well, and if you think about it, rest does not just mean sleep or chill out or whatever. It could be pause. It could be just a period of like nothing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like
I feel like he would want to observe what he just made.
yeah. So like it wasn't necessarily like you said it's because he's finished, and so the seventh day was something like just the day to observe and to witness all that he had done, but not because he was tired or anything. It's just like you said, he was finished, and rest doesn't mean that he had to be like, oh, I can rest finally.
Mm-hmm.
No, it's just the pause, the break.
And probably because he was like, I'm going to pause because everything is perfect right now, but soon everything is just going to move.
I'll take it in for a second. I need to enjoy it while I can.
No, I'm just kidding. All right, so now there are what a lot of people will say are the 6 main theories of creation. This is going to be difficult, and it's going to be hard, and I want you to know, first of all, I don't agree with all of these. I'm simply presenting them because this is what people say, and it's good to know them so that way you can figure out what the Bible says and then also why people talk about this. What's interesting is that all of these 6 theories don't really disagree with the Bible. Some of them, however, or maybe you could say all of them, stretch interpretation in one way or another. And so we get kind of a difficult thing that comes with that.
So is this still about creation or is this evolution?
Creation.
Can we do evolution next week?
Well, we were kind of talking about creation and evolution simultaneously.
Okay.
About how creation is what happened.
Yeah, but you haven't even gotten to the second half of this.
You haven't?
Mm-mm.
Oh, yeah. We're at an hour and 10 minutes, so we will definitely need to then, like, split this up. That somehow, whatever logical break you can come up with.
That's fine. I thought we were talking about creation and evolution simultaneously. But
We have been. They've been doing that. But
Yeah.
like, to finish the second half of your
Okay.
statement.
And I don't think we necessarily, I'm not saying second half of the text, but the topic that we need to cover, you need to find a good logical break where we can actually finish the conversation up another time because, yeah, we are an hour and 10 minutes in.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So then, do we want to just end it here at 1:00 and then go over theories of the age of creation?
I was actually wondering if that's maybe why it was brought up now, is because that's a good point to break
this.
Yeah.
This is a fine point to pause if we want to.
That would be great.
And especially because each of these points, we could probably go on to each one for about 10 minutes, and that would fill up an hour.
Yeah,
so
I was just sitting here thinking, oh my goodness, he gave Sean a warning. You were like, you gave some sort of warning here about like these are going to be something, and I was like, I don't want to.
Not necessarily.
No, it's all of us, but
yeah.
I was sitting here thinking, I really don't want to sit here for another hour talking about stuff. Well, we still need to do communion too.
Oh, yeah,
Wait, it's communion today?
Yep, it's communion day.
I didn't realize that.
I didn't prepare my heart.
I didn't let people know so that we could have them do it at home.
Yeah, first
You
Sunday
are
of every
supposed
month.
to know that.
Yeah, first Sunday every month.
Well, I pay attention to what goes on.
It's the first Sunday every month.
I don't even know what day it is.
It's
It's the first Sunday of the month.
I love how you.
The 2nd of December. It's a really warm December.
All right, so I guess we will end it there. We will talk about theories of the age of creation, and then I guess get into a bigger discussion about evolution next week.
All right.
So invite all your atheist friends so that we
Are
can
we
fight.
going to do communion live after lunch?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, we need to do it after lunch because that's what we talked about.
So yeah, make sure you hit that subscribe button so that you get notified when we.
Hit that like, smash that like, subscribe.
Is
So
the video on?
Yeah.
Yeah, are we doing that thing where we pray to close and then shut off live stream and do
Yep.
prayer requests?
Yep.
Okay.
I think that's going to be a consistent thing, right?
Okay.
But then to encourage them, did we want to say how did we?
Yeah. So essentially, how we're doing it is we're gonna pray to close the live stream, so that way we can then have prayer requests and stuff that are more. What's the word I'm looking for?
Confidential.
Confidential, maybe, that people can feel comfortable sharing without worrying it being recorded for all of eternity, as well as maybe that people they don't know find about it. So
Well, I was gonna say though.
we encourage people to leave comments.
They can DM too, right?
Yeah, direct message, comment, whatever. Any prayer requests you have, and we'll pray for that as well.
Right.
So, like, depending on whether they want it to be private or not, they can just comment if they don't care. But
Yeah.
Maybe, yeah.
Yeah. And if there isn't private messaging, you can always email me, Sean, SEAN, at TEMPLETON.IO. And then you can just replay that.
Probably
if you
put
need
that
to
in the
hear it.
link in the description. Maybe.
Probably.
That's Sean.Templeton.
Oh my gosh, I confuse people.
I'm just kidding.
We actually do have a church email because we have a Gmail account, but it's like something really complicated. So
Fellowships of Acts.
yeah, it's like something like Fellowships of Acts 242 Church at Gmail or something. I don't know. But anyway, okay, cool. So
We really should link somebody's email in the description.
Alright.
Cool.
Put in Ashton's personal email. Just kidding. Yeah, we probably shouldn't for reasons.
for reason. Okay, so
Anybody want to pray to close?
I can pray.
Okay, go for it.
Dear Heavenly Father, thank you very much that with the technical difficulties that we had, that you overcame them, and that we were able to see and hear everything that we need to. And God, I pray that as we depart from here, that you would be with each of us, both in this building and those who have been watching on live stream, and that you would help us to apply anything that we learned to our daily walk with you. And Lord, I pray that you would bless us each this week in whatever way we need to be, so that we can fulfill your will in our personal lives for your eternity. I love you, and I thank you so much for what you're doing here. It's hard to put into words what you do here sometimes, and it's very beautiful. It's in Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
y'all have a good day.
Mm-hmm.
Y'all come back now, you heard?